Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamu alaikum. I hope you all guys are doing well. This is Noor and today's lecture is about interview. The word interview means to see or to meet. In French, the word interview is written as entrevue, while in English it was written as interview, but in 16th century it was named as interview, in which I replaced E. Basically, interview is the interaction between the two individuals for the purpose of data collection. Or we can say that the structured conversation where one participant asks questions and the other provides answer, that kind of phenomena is called as interview. There are two major approaches to gathering information about a situation, person, problem, or any phenomena. So, based upon the broad approaches to gathering information, data can be categorized as primary data and secondary data. So, the term interview or the phenomena of interview comes under the umbrella of primary data. Interview is a commonly used method of collecting information from people. So, according to Manette et al., an interview involves an interviewer reading questions to the respondents and recording their answers. Moreover, according to Burns, an interview is a verbal interchange, often face to face, through the telephone, and may be used in which the interviewer tries to elicit information, beliefs, or opinions from the other person. Thus, any person to person interaction, either face to face or otherwise, between two or more individuals with a specific purpose in mind, that is called as interview. So, when interviewing a respondent, you as a researcher or interviewer have the freedom to decide the format and content of the questions, decide the way you want to ask the questions, or choose the order. So, that is all depending upon the interviewer, that how he organizes his way of talking or his way of asking the questions to the interview. So this process of asking questions can either be very flexible, where you can where you as an interviewer have the freedom to think about and formulate questions as they come to your mind around the issue being investigated, or it can also be proved as inflexible, where you as a researcher or interviewer have to keep strictly to the questions decided beforehand. So, based upon these ideas, interviews are classified into different categories according to this degree of flexibility. So, first one is unstructured interview, and the second one is structured interview. Unstructured interview is an interview in which there is a flexible interview structure, in which the researcher is free to order the questions in whatever sequence he wish, and he is also free in terms of wordings he use and the way he explain the questions to the respondents. So this kind of flexibility is found in unstructured interview. Furthermore, the researcher may formulate questions and raise issues on the spur of the moment, depending upon the context of the discussion. So there is flexibility in interviewing questions, flexibility in interviewing structure, and flexibility in interviewing contents as well. So, moving towards the structured interviewing. So, structured interviewing is basically it asks the predetermined set of questions using the same wording and order of questions as specified in the interview schedule. So in structured interviewing, there is rigid interview structure that cannot be falsified or that cannot be changed at all, and there is rigid interview contents and contents, the context, everything that is undeniable. Moreover, in structured interviewing, there is a rigidity in interviewing questions and their wordings, and none of the word or the question can be altered in structured interviewing. So, that is the basic difference between the structured and the unstructured interviewing. Moving towards the advantages of interview. So basically, there are many advantages of interviews. Some of them are written below as that interviews are more appropriate for complex questions. That it's a most appropriate approach for studying complex and sensitive areas which can't be identified by the other people easily. So interview is a kind of approach through which the interviewer can get the complex ideas easily from the interview. The second one is useful for collecting in-depth information. No common people are unable to get the information in depth. So interviewer as a researcher is able to get the in-depth information from the interview in a very different idea, in a very different ways. In an interview situation, it's possible for an interviewer to obtain interview in depth by probing. So next one is information can be supplemented. So in moving to, so coming towards the advantages of interview back, the interviewer can supposed to get the information from the interviewee in a supplemented way, that he can supplement information obtained from the responses with those gained from the observation of non-verbal reactions of the respondent. So that's how the interviewer is able to supplement the information too. Moreover, questions can also be explained. So it is likely that the questions will be it is less likely that the questions will be misunderstood by the respondent. That because during the interview, the interviewer tries his best to convey his ideas to the respondent to obtain the information more easily. So it is way less likely to be misunderstood the questions. The next one advantage of interview is that interviewing has a wider application. No matter what area or what type of people are there, interview can be taken at any time. So it can be used with almost any type of population: child, handicapped, illiterate, old, young, anyone. So interview can be taken with anyone. Disadvantages. So, what are the disadvantages of interview? So, firstly, is it is time consuming and expensive. Interview can be time consuming and expensive if it is if its potential respondents are scattered over a wide geographical area. But if you have a situation such as a specified area like an office or any hospital or any agency, there the potential respondents can answer the questions very quickly, and it will be less time consuming and less expensive. So the second one disadvantage is the quality of data depends upon the quality of interaction. Basically, the quality in an interview, the quality of interaction between the interviewer and the interviewee is likely to affect the quality of information. So there must be the corresponding understanding and compatibility between the interviewer and the interview to get the required information from the interview. The third one is the quality of data depends upon the quality of interviewer. So, here in an interview, the quality of information obtained is affected by the expert skills of the interviewer. So, when the interviewer is skilled and he has some expertise and he knows some tactics to obtain the information, to gather the information from the interview, he can gain it. So it totally or it vividly depends upon the quality of interviewer as well, that how much capable he is. The fourth one is the quality of data may vary with multiple interviewers. So that's again an issue in an interview, that if in an interview there are more than one interviewers asking the questions from only one respondent, there can be the situation of chaos, and use of multiple interviewers can magnify the problem of for the interviewee, and he cannot answer the questions easily. The fifth one is the researcher may introduce his or her bias. So, researcher bias in the framing of questions or in the interpretation of answers is always possible. So, there can be any type of possibility in the biasness that the researcher may show during the interpretation of answers or during the framing of questions. So, moving towards the forms of questions. So, there are two forms of questions. One is open ended, and the second one is close ended. Open ended questions are the ones that, in open ended questions, the possible responses are not given. That in a way that open-ended questions occupies a large area in which the possible responses which the interviewer ask the interviewee is unable to tell them easily. So the possible responses are not given. And if used in interview, open-ended questions provide in-depth information because they uh, they have a large area of occupation and they can uh, tell from any angle. So in open-ended questions, they can provide in-depth information. So third one is analysis of open-ended questions is more difficult because the interviewee has different opinions and beliefs, so that analysis becomes sometimes difficult for the interviewer to analyze it. And fourth one is there is a greater chance of interviewer bias. So as I have discussed earlier, the interviewer biasness is always possible in every way during the interpretation of answers or during the framing of questions or during the questioning. Everything is possible in the biasness. Fifth one is the open-ended questions allow respondents to express themselves freely. So in a way it is kind of good gesture that the interviewee is freely able to express their ideas and communicate their opinions very easily. And the last one is that open ended questions are for seeking opinions, attitudes, and perceptions, or we can say that in open ended questions, the researcher or interviewer examines the way of answering of interviewee and the way of conveying their ideas to the other people. So in a way it is more eminent and more difficult as compared to close-ended questions. So in close-ended questions of interview, the possible responses are given because they are just the specified areas, so the possible responses are given and they are kind of easy things. They provide lack of in-depth information variety because in the close-ended questions the researcher will ask only to the point answers, so that will not give the in-depth information, but it will only give the to the point answers. The analysis of close ended questions are not that difficult, they are easily and analyzed as compared to open-ended questions. In closed-ended questions, the respondents are restricted to give specified answers, and they are not allowed to give their opinions or perceptions about a specific topic, but they are restricted to particular answers to be given by to the interviewer. The last one is close ended questions are extremely useful in eliciting factual information. The factorized information is given in the close ended questions. No opinions, no participation, no self participation. So here comes the prerequisites of data collection through the interview. So motivation to share the required information. So there always comes the permission that must be um, the permission must be taken by the interviewer uh, from the interviewee to give the specified information of a certain event or anything. So, motivation to share the required information, the interviewee must be motivated to share the information with the interviewer in a good manner. The second one is clear understanding of the questions. The interviewer must ask the questions in a way that interview can answer them easily, because there must not be complex questions that the interviewee is unable to answer and expresses ideas freely. The third one is possession of the required information. The interviewer must ensure that the interviewee has the um, command over the situation or over the information, so he can share the information in an easiest way. The last one is how to start an interview. The interviewer must always start the interview from the simple questions. Simple questions, then climbing the ladder to the probe questions or to the complex questions or investigating questions of different opinions. And the third one is cues. The interviewer is highly appreciated when he takes the person or observes the person from his cues, from his ideas, or from his gestures, and make any judgment. So this is this is the completion of the interview, and here comes the end of the part of interview lecture. I hope you all have got it. We'll We'll see you all in the next video. Till then, take care. Allah Hafiz.